So, what did you think? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, that leads us to the most important question. Vince, where does Time to Kill Tempo di Uccidere from 1989 rate on your Cageometer?
Movie? I give it a 6. It's not a great film. It's not a bad film. I think I rate a little bit higher than I probably would have initially, after kind of reflecting upon the brutal honesty that the film had, showcasing the Italian campaign through Ethiopia and how they were the bad guys, and the fact that it's made by an Italian writer, director, to be able to speak so honestly about the brutality of your own country, I think should be something that should be admired.
It's so that kind of refreshing, and I wish that some of the other countries would follow suit. But
so that brought my score up more. I definitely enjoyed the fact that they didn't pull any punches when it came to activities and crimes that happened during their time in Ethiopia. Cage, I'll give him a 6 as well. I kind of teetered on whether I should give him a 6 or 7, but I'll give him a 6 because it's not a poorly acted movie, but he didn't really, bring anything great to it. I love that there were cagey moments in it because it made it interesting, but maybe it's just the poor transfer quality. I couldn't really tell how much emotion he brought to it because, man, there were times where it was really hard to tell what the fuck was going on. It's like really dark scenes or just very pixelated. So I didn't really get a good look at his physical performance, and that's one thing that I always look for with him. Because he's a very physical actor, and that's where, for me, I kind of watch a lot of, or that's where I kind of grade him on, is a lot of his his physical nuances that he adds to the character and to the movie. But there were moments, like we talked about, sorry, just real quick, like that look he gives Johannes, that for me, I thought was like the most emotional scene, and I'm glad that there was some clarity to it because you do get to see the depth to his emotions and character at that moment. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of teetered on 6 or 7. I think that being early on, maybe I should be a little more generous and give him a 7, but I'm just gonna flat out give him a 6 on this one. Kind of tying in with the movie.
Wish I could have gotten you guys the transfer of like the DVD that I have, because it was much clearer than the YouTube version. I had to do part of the breakdown with the YouTube version, and it was hard to even see what was going on in a lot of scenes, and it is much clearer on the transfer that I have, and you can see more depth to his performance, and I do I think 6 is warranted. But yeah, especially like when he's freaking out and like thinks that he has leprosy, you can definitely tell like there's a lot of emotion going on and behind his eyes in those moments.
You didn't take to the streets going, I'm a leper, I'm a leper, I'm a leper.
All right, that leads us over to Nigel. Where does Time to Kill rate on your Cageometer?
I like this movie. I was pleasantly surprised by it because obviously haven't heard of it prior to this. I don't think a lot of people in the U.S. have, unless you're studying Nick Cage as we are. But it was, I don't want to say enjoyable, but I enjoyed watching it. Like, it was a unique perspective you don't see in films very often. I do echo what Vince said, that I appreciate they didn't really shy away from the horrible things that happened in it. They didn't try to paint Enrico as sympathetic. I mean, I guess you could sympathize or empathize with him toward the end, because if you're a good person, you might feel like you can feel how tortured he is and stuff, but I don't think the movie tried to make you go out of your way to forgive him or do anything like that. Like, they leave that up to somebody like Johannes, who is the only person who really should forgive him and or has the capacity to forgive him, and does. So there's some morality there to study. But it's a gray movie, not just in color tone, but the scan we saw was pretty great. But it just sort of leaves you tells a story as it is and leaves you to feel how you feel about it. And yeah, they didn't really shy away from all the atrocities that a lot of Europe did in colonizing, not just Italy, but definitely this is an Italian film. So you get that perspective. It's a perspective that I wasn't aware of. I don't know a lot about all of those colonization efforts that happened in basically modern history. It wasn't that long ago. But
sadly, yeah.
Yeah, and like we said, it's still going on today, so I think this is a relevant film even now to watch. And yeah, so I give it a 6 as well. It wasn't a stellar film, but it was really good for what kind of felt like a low budget kind of, I don't know if you want to use the term indie because I don't know what the studio situation is like over in Italy, but definitely not like a Hollywood scale effort. But I feel like it had enough performative art in there to appreciate and make you think about what you're watching. And it wasn't just it wasn't a wasted effort, I guess is a good way to say it. It's a good film. You can call it artsy or whatever you want, but it does make you think and feel. Cage's performance, I also would give him a 6 as well. I kind of felt he was awkward in most of it. It felt like he was kind of out of his element while he was filming it, which might be due to the fact that he was filming with all a bunch of Italians in Africa. But he definitely kind of sticks out amongst the other. I feel like almost every other actor in the movie does a better job than he does in a lot of scenes. So it's kind of weird. It's a weird choice to have him cast as the main character. I think this movie would have been better if you just have an all Italian cast and not somebody like Cage, who was a little distracting in it. But props to him for playing this character. And again, it's got to be a difficult character to play because I doubt that he sympathizes with him too much and condones the actions of the character. But to get across the screen, like, kind of have some of that charm that Nicolas Cage brings and not be like a complete, like he is a complete monster, but he doesn't seem like it on the surface just because he's kind of nice, you know. He's kind of charming. He just does horrible things, and horrible things happen to him as the result of it. And you can sort of just judge him based on that rather than in any like over the top bad or malevolent performance.
Yeah.
So it must have been kind of difficult for him to play this role, especially that early in his career. Like, you know, we said he did indie films kind of early on and he likes doing those, but it must have been a completely different ball game to go other side of the planet from with a bunch of people who may or may not speak English and in a completely different type of setting and film system that he was probably used to.
Yeah.
He said this is the only movie he did that wasn't like a Hollywood production. So to do that pretty early on was probably pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about, like the leap that you have to take to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So that
I could
takes
see him
courage.
doing it now, but back then, that early on and that young in his career was
Especially after like Moonstruck and all those roles and stuff. Like he had, you know, Boy in Blue, Moonstruck, Raising Arizona, even at that point, you know. It's kind of crazy that he did this film. And Vampire's Kiss, you know.
Yeah.
Like we said, maybe Vampire's Kiss was kind of why? Like nobody wanted to take a risk on him at that point.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, this guy makes some out there choices.
Yeah. So we talked about it at the start. I think a 20% audience Rotten Tomatoes is pretty harsh for it. I don't understand why. I can see why that many, like a lot of people didn't like the movie because it is not a feel good film and it kind of leaves you ambiguous at the end. Like, how are you supposed to feel? And I know I talked about like I've railed against the Weatherman for kind of leaving me feeling down like that, but I felt like the tonal mismatch of Weatherman was like it's trying to make you feel okay with that ending, but I didn't, you know. And this just doesn't. This makes you feel like, yeah, the guy kind of got away with it, and it's shitty. And then World War II happened, and that's really shitty as well. And that's what happened. So life is shitty, you know.
Yeah. And you probably just assume that he got his comeuppance because he went to World War II.
Yeah, but
Italy.
we don't know.
Yeah,
or he was discharged when he got home and lived happily ever after. You know?
Maybe.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you think like, yeah, this happened everywhere, all over the place at the time, and there were lots of people who went on and just led nice lives afterwards. And lots of people whose lives were destroyed, and that's just the reality of history. So yeah, maybe you should reflect on the human condition a little bit more than just getting Hollywood endings for all of your films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt about it. Jumping over to my side, because I feel like it's important to have these kinds of films to kind of like reflect on the past and try not to repeat these types of horrible things. And I'm sure that when Italians came back from Ethiopia, people were like greeting them as heroes and stuff. And these guys did some pretty fucked up, horrible things. And it's refreshing that Italy themselves would allow this film to happen, like that this film was made, because like, I feel like in the US, there's films like Platoon and stuff that kind of like point out atrocities that we've done and terrible things that have been committed by soldiers, going over to these other countries and stuff. But like, I don't feel like we've done it quite warts and all like this and shown all of that. Well, I don't know. I guess there are those kinds of films.
There are,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I applaud that for sure, because I don't feel like a lot of countries would have the courage to kind of put that out there and paint themselves in this light. So I gave the film a 6 as well, because I'll echo pretty much everything you guys said. It's nice to have a real warts and all look at what happened over there. And like I said, it probably was actually sugar-coated quite a bit. I'm sure it was even worse than this. All sorts of god-awful things. And, we do kind of see it through the guise of a rape, and then we see a murder, and then we see, mass massacre of people and all this stuff, just because they like cooperated with the Italians and stuff. I don't know exactly why they killed the village people. But
it could have also been because it was a group of Christians.
Maybe, and that was a whole thing that happened over there too. And that was forced upon them by the Italians and multiple other European countries who came over there and whipped a little Christianity on everybody against their will and kind of forced upon them. But going down the list, cinematography was good. It's kind of hard to tell, especially on the YouTube transfer, which, if you have interest in this film, I would suggest picking up the DVD. You can find a somewhat decent transfer on eBay for like $20. And actually watching it that way rather than watching the YouTube version.
Yeah. I feel like we missed a lot by watching that poor quality version. Yeah.
Some of the geography and time questions bothered me a little bit, but that's, it's not really a big deal. Music was great. It's Ennio Morricone, man. I mean, come on.
The music was good. It was really good. That's
a great reason just to watch this film by itself. And maybe if you learn some lessons along the way, that's great. But, just listen to the score is great. Editing was pretty decent. I feel like the direction was a little off in spots. So, a 6, I think, is about the highest I can give it. For Cage, I also gave him a 6. Like I said, the transfer showed you a little bit more of his emotion than the YouTube version. I feel like the YouTube version is really, really, really crappy. I think it's like 360 or something like that. It's just really bad. But at least it's free.
Yeah,
you can watch it at any point.
I didn't find it too distracting or too detracting from the performance personally.
That's kind of one thing
to get over, that it's kind of lower quality.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed throughout, especially with these films, is like they could be amazing shot films, really high resolution, and still be absolute piles of shit, or they can be really crappy resolution, but the story still comes across. And that's at the end of the day, that's the most important part of the whole thing, is telling a good story. And I do feel like they told a very good and a very relevant story. This is, like you said, still happening to this day, and it's something that needs to be pointed out. Back to Cage. We've talked about it in the past that he didn't like playing these kinds of villains. And for him to be, I mean, you got to admit, like, it's pretty brave of him and pretty ballsy. And maybe it was forced upon him. I don't know exactly the story. I wish we had more of that story of like why he did this film. But like for him to go to a system that he's not used to work for Italian crew that he probably couldn't communicate very well with. I feel like he might speak a little bit of Italian. I feel like I read that at some point because his family is Italian. Obviously, the Coppola family is Italian. And like Francis Ford Coppola goes back to Italy all the time. I think he even has like a home over there.
He has a villa.
Yeah.
Or a vineyard or something along those lines. But yeah, he has
something like that. I remember like there was I forget which show it was, but Anthony Bourdain went and spent an episode with him.
Oh yeah, he's got that
Parts Unknown. Yeah.
That wine line, right?
Yeah, he's got the Coppola.
Yeah.
But I think most of the vineyards are actually up in Napa.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. Might be over in Italy too. But anyways, for Cage to go over there and then play this absolute scumbag, which is something that he's probably not super happy to do. Pretty brave, You got to commend him for that. And I do think that he brought the gravitas, and like you said, he had the charm to like make you feel a little bit sympathetic for this person who we shouldn't feel sympathetic for. That's a testament to his acting and his ability to make you like him even in a very unlikable role. So yeah, 6 out of 10.